out to the towns. We shot out an email to all the chiefs. Well, I shouldn't say first. I think Montclair was the first one. And then we started pushing it out to other towns. But this is the first time I'm showing my PowerPoint presentation in the community. So just to give you a little history about myself, I have worked in the Essex County Prosecutor's Office for the past 19 years. I've been there in different capacities. I've worked my way from detective, lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, and then most recently this past December to chief of detectives. So a little bit about myself. I come from St. Vincent Academy. I don't know if anyone's been running from St. Vincent's, usually it is. NGIT, Seton Hall, and then I made my way to the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. I have been there for almost 19 years. Time flies, you believe that? So I've been around, and more than half of my career has been in internal affairs or / professional standards, as it's been renamed in the past several years. As you know, fatal police shootings are a hot topic in the nation, right? And I like to start with numbers. I told you I went to NGIT, so numbers used to be really my thing until my kids start doing math. But, and you know what I'm talking about. So let's look at the numbers first. So in 2010, in Essex County, we had 7 fatal police shootings. And that's county-wide. So that begins, it can be in Newark, Irvington, East Orange. I cannot remember the last time Glen Ridge has had a shooting outside of here, sorry. But we've had, it built up. So, but most times the person shot or involved possession of a weapon, robbery, carjacking, burglary, or aggravated assault on someone else. 2011, there were 3. Same circumstances. That year we had an escaped prisoner, which added to our count of 3. 2012, 2. Okay. Am I going too fast? Okay, I'm sorry. 2012, these are just the numbers at a snapshot, and I believe I can go back if you have questions later on. 2012, 2 persons shot, same situation, possession of a weapon, carjacking. 2013, 5 actually, and you'll see added to that was domestic violence, and that was, not officer related, but an officer responding to a domestic violence incident. 2014, none. 2015, 0. And so far in 2016, we have actually had 2 shootings but not fatal. So something else that's interesting to know, I don't know how many of you have seen in the Washington Post. I mean, I don't like to always just go straight to internet sources or the media for statistics on things like this, but I found that to be interesting. Anyone who go there, they do a great job with tabulating the shootings, fatal shootings throughout the nation. So it's not just New Jersey they will show the nation. And I think that's interesting to look at to see what is really going on. And if you go to the website, they have these little charts. You can hover over the state, you can hover over each shooting, you can see, it gives you the name, it gives you the date, it gives you a few facts. So that's why I find it to be somewhat credible, because it's not like they're just pushing numbers in there. A lot of statistical information and data to back up what they're doing. So 2016, 702 so far. And again, Essex County, we're still at 0. And this is just, I think, what's going on. 2016 though, in New Jersey so far there were 7. I don't know about you, but I have not heard about all 7 of them. I mean, the media is amazing how some things they pick up on, some things they do not. Nationwide, that's what it looks like. That's the map. And you can see it's happening all over the nation. But we hear about certain ones. And most times it's in the concentrated city parts of the nation. But Again, you see the dots are spread pretty much evenly, right? Said that. This is a snapshot at all of our police-involved shootings in Essex County. With the correction for 2016, we actually had 2 so far. That again was a hit. So still, that's what we have. And when I say no hit, that means an officer discharged his weapon at someone, but there was no contact. And most likely the person was apprehended without consent, or the person was able to get away. Non-fatal, again, person was shot, was grazed, recovered. Okay? Now, just to give you a little history, the Attorney General's office came out with guidelines way back in the 90s, but before that, but they repeatedly update them. So the most recent years, 2013, 15? Oh, 15. They had a revision, I think, in 13 too, but our most recent one in 2015, they added some things to the AG guidelines on use of force, specifically for police shootings, okay? And the core principles of that is that they want investigations to be comprehensive and impartial. Now, if I go back a little bit, this was really nothing new to us because we always did it this way, but the AG's office, they mandated it in a lot of ways, and they added, they tightened it up, let's say that. Okay, they wanted to maintain the integrity of the investigation, ongoing investigations, meaning we wanted to make sure we cut out certain things. So, if you respond to a police shooting, if he and I are friends and I discharge my weapon, he can no longer be part of the investigation. And we had done that. We responded to shootings and responding officer who's the investigator said we're classmates, like go home. And that's just what we do. Because we want an impartial investigation. We want to make sure you can go into this clear head, not thinking this is my godson's, my godson's father. Just, this is an investigation of a police incident. Mandatory review of all facts. So that means all the facts, all the witnesses, all the evidence must be reviewed for any potential conflicts, just what I described. Multi-tiered layers of independent review. So not only is the investigation reviewed by the investigative team, which would be the detectives and the assistant prosecutor responding, and that's something else that they added. A lot of times the APs, that's the assistant prosecutors, would come out to the scene, but now it's mandatory. On every scene, there is an assistant prosecutor. On every scene, there is an IA commander, meaning a captain or above. On every scene, you will have a review whether or not there's a conflict. Then from there, it goes to the next layer of review, which could be the director, the deputy chief assistant prosecutor, ultimately the prosecutor, then on to the Attorney General's office. And between there, it also goes to the grand jury. Oops. I'm gonna pop these all in. Lorraine did that for us. Lorraine is our IT person who likes bells and whistles. We made her keep out the graphics because she likes dancing things across the screen. So again, the AG's office did this to make uniformity. So now, not only is Essex County doing it, Monmouth County, Middlesex County, Union County, every county has to do the same thing. Okay? So transparency. At the end of the investigation, the results of the grand jury, the results of our investigation, no matter which route it took, has to be posted. It actually goes on our website. If you go to the Essex County Prosecutor's Office website, any of those shootings that I previously had on that screen, the facts of the shooting, and not specific like bullet point details, are on here. So we can't give up every detail of the investigation. But there's enough about the shooting, what you read in the paper, most likely, and added what happened at grand jury, or what happened as a review, as a result of our review of the investigation. So that is the transparency we've added to it, as per the AG guidelines. Ongoing outreach and studies. So that means that's why I'm here tonight. Ongoing outreach to the community so that you know when you see that on television in New Jersey and Essex County, this is what is really happening. No, it's not being investigated, you know, by their friends. It's not that blue wall of silence. It's not that situation. It's being investigated by an impartial body of investigators and assistant prosecutors. Studies. We repeatedly review what we do. And we give feedback to the AG's office saying, you know, this part right here, we don't think this works so well. Or this part right here needs to be maybe tightened up and a little more strict or a little less strict. So deadly force. So when we talk about police shootings, let's understand, law enforcement are given the right to use deadly force. That's part of their training, that's part of them being there. When someone is knocking on your door, kicking in your door, has a gun on the other side of the door, who do you call? The police. You dial 911, right? And if someone had a gun pointed at you and there was a police officer standing there, what would you expect them to do? Use deadly force, okay? So that is why officers are given the right to use deadly force, to protect themselves and or a third party, meaning the community or another person, another law enforcement officer, okay? There's the only instances we're not allowed to use deadly force is protect property, okay? Unless it's an arson, which, as you know, could create mass spread injury to a person. So, I'm not going to get too deep into that. That's Matt's realm. But reasonable, okay? Reasonable force. So, if someone is lunging at an officer with a knife, if someone is pointing a gun, if the officer reasonably believes that that person is going to cause serious bodily injury, serious bodily injury or death to someone else, they have the right, and it's immediately necessary, okay? Immediately necessary, they have the right to use force. Use of deadly force is like I described, okay? Attorney General guidelines, put that into effect. We talked about that in 2015. They established the uniform statewide policy. I do this all the time. I teach also, and I'll go past my PowerPoint. I just put it out. But for those of you who do not know, I mentioned grand jury. So the process, the Essex County Prosecutor's Office has customarily put cases into grand jury, meaning 23 civilians get to review cases of deadly force, okay? Most times when someone is, those shooting hits, when someone is injured, the grand jury, those cases go to grand jury. So they go before civilian bodies of individuals that sit on a weekly basis and hear those kinds of cases. And they make the decision whether or not deadly force was appropriately used, okay? And in the cases where the prosecutor makes the decision that shooting was justified, it still has to go to the Attorney General's office. And believe me, it doesn't just go to the Attorney General's office and they sign it and they say, oh great, we said okay, we say okay. They customarily ask questions. They ask for additional facts. They will ask for re-interviews. They will review it again. And we'll send it back and forth if they feel that it's necessary. And they can ultimately tell us, no, this must go to grand jury. So we're not out there by ourselves making these decisions. I talked about the conflict, but what I didn't mention was, if there is a conflict at the scene, that has to be reported in writing. And again, the conflict is if I know of anyone involved in it. And that applies to me too as the chief. If I go to a scene and there's someone I know, I'm conflicted out. Meaning I can't attend any of the meetings or any of the discussions about the shooting. So it doesn't just end with me or the prosecutor. I mean, we also can be conflicted out. It applies to us as well. So, and if there is a conflict, the AG can take it, or they can assign it to another county. All right, so I already said that. But we can, on certain cases, we can elect to use people in other parts of the investigation. So if a shooting were to happen in a city, none of the officers in that city can investigate the case, unless we need them for a special reason, and then we deputize them. So for instance, if I needed ballistics done in a case, and say Newark PD had a special ballistics person who was specially trained in certain weapons, and I needed him to help do our investigation of the shooting, but it was a Newark shooting, I basically would deputize him to work on this case. But he would be instructed that he's only to report to us, he is not to discuss the case with anyone else. And does anyone know what would happen if he or she did? It's called official misconduct. He could be indicted for a crime, okay? So that's how we handle conflict. So no reports, videos, or any other information can also be released to the media, to anyone else not involved in the case. That also means the officer involved in the shooting. So if there's a video, we are not allowed to show the video to the officer without the approval of the assistant prosecutor assigned to the case. And we do that because we don't want certain information getting out or tainting witnesses or potential witnesses. So in our office, there is a presumption, though, that most cases where there's death or serious bodily injury, they go to grand jury. I can say in my years in the office, and I told you I did more than half my years in internal affairs, all cases involving death are presented to the grand jury. And I explained this also, undisputed facts. But the undisputed facts case, don't be confused, they still get vetted through the Attorney General's office, and even if we believe these facts are undisputed, they still can be sent to grand jury if we're told we have to do so. I said that. And then, I talked about public statement. After this administrative review, when no indictment is returned, is still referred. Now, here's the interesting part. What happens once the case is returned back from the grand jury, from the AG's office, and they say, okay, so the use of force itself was justified. It doesn't end there, because now the case must be presented to the department for administrative review. Okay? That means, yes, you did a justified job in using force, but you did other things incorrectly. Okay? So that part is done by the department, and then the department has to report back to us what their findings were on their administrative review. And if there are some findings on its face that we see as an administrative issue, we will advise the department in our letter returning it back to them. These are the things you should look at in your administrative review. We can do that as well. Okay? And again, we monitor that things are done in a timely manner, because there's a 45-day rule for officers to be disciplined once the case goes back. So, upcoming and ongoing initiatives, which will involve use of force. Body cameras. The chief spoke of that. Glen Ridge is moving to body cameras, as are approximately 13 other counties in Essex County. Tasers, less lethal devices. A lot of towns are opting to buy tasers. Implicit bias training. That training we plan to launch early next year, countywide. We're going to offer a training course for every town in Essex County. And the purpose of that training is, in order to speak honestly about use of force and police shootings and just contact with citizens in general, you must discuss implicit bias. Now, one of the implicit bias things I deal with, and it's sort of funny, but I was at a training this past week, and I go into the I don't know if you've been in Marriott, it's called the M Club. I walked into the M Club to get water to go back to my training. And as I'm walking out, an older lady stops me that works in there, and she says, "Do you know how much it takes me to load that refrigerator with those waters?" So I'm like, okay, like where's this going? So I'm like, what is she asking me? And then she looks down, because I had on my ID for the training, the swipe ID, and she's like, and she starts apologizing. So I'm like, what happened? So she says, "Oh my God, I thought you worked here." Now mind you, I was in Arkansas. So most of African Americans in Arkansas in that hotel were working here. Is that an implicit bias? And I had a suit. So, but there were some ladies that worked in the back office with a suit on. So she was very embarrassed. But my point is, there is an implicit bias. We look at things one way. She saw me, African American woman, dressed up in a hotel. She thought I worked in the office. That's just, it's just sometimes how we're programmed. And part of our implicit bias training is to make you recognize that you should see things differently. Because it's not just identifying someone who's sagging pants and white t-shirts and dressed a certain way. Guess what? Officers and individuals can get hurt by looking at things the other way too. You see someone freshly dressed, looks harmless, right? You never know. He or she could have a weapon hidden under their clothes as well. Okay? So the implicit bias training is not just to say officers are looking at things awful, wrong. It's to open your minds to think differently, think broader. Sanctuary program. We have a sanctuary program that we offer at least once a year, and it teaches and it brings in individuals who want to work with domestic violence. Citizen and Clergy Academy, again, we invite the citizens and the clergy into our home, the Essex County Prosecutors, to learn about what we do in Essex County. And we talk about contemporary issues that are affecting us today. We have internship programs, we have high school, college, and law school students in our office all year round. All year round, we have that. Any questions? I think we're going to wait to the end.
If you could wait to the end for the questions, we'll have a full Q&A period after all the presenters.
I'm going to step up.
Thank you, Chief. Our next presenter is Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Campion. He's the Civil Rights Chief, Enforcement and Constitutional. He is the Chief of the Civil Rights Division on the civil side of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and his program that we're speaking about tonight is Civil Rights Enforcement and Constitutional Policing. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a rainy Thursday night. It's appreciated. It's great to see such wonderful community engagement. So I'd like to thank Chief Byron for inviting me here tonight and for the great work of our officers in our community. So who am I? What am I talking about? Why am I here? I'm an attorney at the US Attorney's Office, which is part of the United States Department of Justice. My boss is the U.S. Attorney, Paul Fisher. His boss is the U.S. Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, the U.S. Attorney is the chief federal prosecutor in the state. So a core part of our mission at the U.S. Attorney's Office is investigating and prosecuting people for violations of federal criminal law. It's how we protect people, some of the most vulnerable members of our society, from those who do us harm. And that work is important. Whether it's political corruption, healthcare fraud, mortgage bank, securities fraud, organized crime, terrorism, cyber attacks, hacking, you name it, my colleagues are on it. But we don't just focus on federal criminal prosecution. When Paul Fishman became the U.S. Attorney, he dedicated a portion of our civil division to work exclusively on civil rights enforcement. And I'm proud to work in that area as the chief of our civil rights unit. So you heard a lot tonight about the Glen Ridge Police Department, what we're doing in Essex County and the state. This perspective will be more of a perspective of what the Justice Department is looking at with respect to some issues of police. We touch upon areas of the state, but also nationwide. So, in the role of the civil rights chief, I am not a criminal prosecutor. I bring civil enforcement actions under the federal civil rights laws. And since Paul became U.S. Attorney, we brought civil rights enforcement actions in many diverse areas. Disability discrimination, discrimination against returning service members, religious discrimination, employment discrimination, housing discrimination, lending discrimination. In fact, last year we got a major bank to pay $25 million in the largest settlement ever in a case involving redlining, which in that case was the systemic discrimination in mortgage lending in African American, Latino neighborhoods throughout the state and some neighboring states. But I'm here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about our civil rights practice as it relates to policing. So let me first say, being a cop is hard and dangerous. Working at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I've been in law enforcement, and I've been for nearly 10 to 17 years. I've been a lawyer. And like most of my colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office, there are a lot of nights I'm out working late, editing a brief, preparing a trial, or an event like this. But as my boss always reminds me, the only thing that my wife and kids really have to worry about is when I get home. They don't worry if I'm coming home. I never pull someone out of a car wreck or burning building. I don't respond to gunshots in the dark alleys or to my colleagues that were attorneys at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm not pulling over a car with tinted windows at 3 a.m. And it's not all of my office have worked with many of those men and women who have. We have enormous admiration and gratitude for police officers across the state and country who are willing to take those kinds of risks to protect the rest of us. But at the same time, we all need to know, and I know everyone on this table agrees, no matter what community we live in, where we were born, what we look like, or what we believe, that the people who are doing that incredibly important work do so while still fully, and I mean fully, respecting our rights under the Constitution. And I also know that the people sitting at this table agree. Constitutional policing is good policing. It's effective policing. It helps build trust with the community. It allows police officers to do a better job. And the Justice Department, my employer, has a history and mission of making sure that the rights of all are respected. And it's what we continue to do every day in New Jersey, in ways large and small. And I'll go through some of those ways. We've heard a bit about police-involved shootings. I'm not going to go into detail about that. But if there is a federal criminal violation, our office will investigate. And for example, on my district, on New Jersey, the Justice Department last week publicly announced that it was opening an investigation surrounding the circumstances of the Tulsa shooting. But let me be clear about those prosecutions. First, I can't be more clear. Most of the men and women in the departments we work with bring enormous dedication and integrity to their jobs over the time they've been on the uniform. And an indictment of one officer is not an indictment of all officers. Second, by prosecuting a few bad cops, we're not solving all the problems. While those cases are extremely important for those affected, these cases are a limited tool and do not allow us to address the complexities involved in the task of policing. But another way, one of the larger ways where the Justice Department and the U.S. Attorney's Office gets involved is we can ensure constitutional rights are respected is what we call a pattern and practice investigation. We have authority to bring a pattern and practice investigation under federal civil rights law that was passed soon after the Rodney King incident. The law permitted the Justice Department to investigate police departments, not for criminal violations, but to determine whether the policies and practices of a particular department comply with the Constitution and federal law. And this is an instance where there's a few isolated instances of the law doesn't allow us to investigate that. It's where things have gotten so systemically bad in a police department over a long period of time that there are fundamental challenges to a department to operate in a constitutional manner. It was first used by the Justice Department to investigate the LAPD after the Rodney King incident. And in this current administration, the Department of Justice has opened more than 20 such investigations around the country, like in Ferguson, Chicago, New Orleans, Baltimore, and just a few miles away with my office's involvement in Newark. As many of you know, we are in the middle of a multi-year effort to bring real changes to the Newark Police Department. Through our investigation, we identified some systemic practices that run counter to constitutional principles. And a couple months ago, we reached a final consent decree with the city that would be the blueprint for real, lasting reform. But those cases aren't reform. That's not the way we typically address all the problems. Most police departments aren't violating the Constitution. While sometimes it's systemic reform, like in those cases, sometimes change comes without investigation. It comes from dialogue and proactive interaction with the community, by the police. And in fact, at the heart of all of the recent agreements the Justice Department and local police departments have had is the concept of community policing. So while traditional policing is often reactive, community policing is often proactive, where there aren't constitutional violations that are readily apparent. And many departments in the state are leaders in this area, and we applaud their efforts. We applaud Chief Byron for her efforts to continually move forward with her department. So what exactly is community policing? It's not a specific program, it's not a specific project or initiative. It's a concept that has evolved over time. But in short, it is an operational philosophy that focuses on police and community partnership, focuses on problem solving, and where necessary, focuses on transformation of the department. So what types of community partnerships? Each community is different. It's different in Newark, it is in Glen Ridge, it is in Millburn, it is in Atlantic City. But broadly, it consists of working cross-section of the police, working with a cross-section of the community stakeholders, community leaders, advocates, local government officers, citizens, and the private sector to address the public safety agenda. This approach helps community and police work together in a crisis situation. It allows for dialogue and for the police and community to address and tackle issues before they become problems. More broadly, community policing embraces the notion that trust and mutual respect between police and the communities they serve is critical to public safety and effective crime control. Through our work, the Justice Department has identified certain elements that are absolutely necessary to building that trust among police and the community. First and foremost, police departments should create opportunities for police officers to have positive interactions outside of the law enforcement context with individuals in the community, somewhat like we're doing tonight. And as was mentioned earlier, as part of this community policing philosophy, departments and officers should be cognizant of and address an implicit bias. I'm not going to go into detail since we've already discussed that, but that is, I just want to note that's important. And as was described, it's happening in Essex County. And these principles almost always play a role in effective communities. So we started tonight with a quote from Dr. King, and I'm going to end with a quote from Dr. King. And I think it has interplay with what we're talking about with police-community relations and dialogue. So as Dr. King continues to say, people fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they do not communicate with each other. So effective communications. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you to all of our speakers. You know, I did want to mention something that I neglected to say before when we were talking about the implicit biases. There are many things in the Glen Ridge Police Department that we do have set in place to make sure that we can monitor. And I think that my biggest point is that we are not waiting for somebody to make a complaint about what they perceive or what is an implicit bias or any type of internal affairs violations. But we have in the police department biannual IA training or internal affairs training or how to accept a complaint. We encourage community policing and community outreach amongst all of our officers and our community service officers who don't get out of the building as much. We have an internal affairs early warning system that our line 3 internal affairs officers regulate and make sure that it's looked at on a weekly basis. We have quarterly, biannual, and annual reports to the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, which I did mention. We have quality checks on officers' patrol videos done by their sergeants and done by internal affairs officers to, we hope, catch an officer doing everything right, but also to make sure that we're not just waiting for somebody to say there was a complaint, we're looking at it. And we also have in our CAD system, which is our computer-aided dispatch, in our LawSoft, a program called Stop Log, which tracks ethnicity or citizen-involved police encounters. So those are just a few things that I didn't mention before that we are proactively and have been doing for many years at the Glen Ridge Police Department, so that there's not an impression that our internal affairs officers are sitting and waiting for a complaint to come in. We all know sometimes complaints don't come in. There's many reasons why people don't complain. We are policing our police. And I'm really happy to report that all of our internal affairs complaints not only can be seen on our website, but that my officers are doing exactly what we want them to do, with the understanding that police officers, like everybody else, are human and they do make mistakes. And when that does happen, it's definitely addressed by internal affairs and by my office. So at this time, I'd like to ask our moderator to assist us. We're going to take any questions or comments anyone in the audience may have. Please step up if you'd like to either say something, make a comment, or ask a question of anyone on the panel.
Thank you, Chief. Once again, my name is Paul Sovich. I happen to be the Commissioner of Public Safety in Glen Ridge. Before we turn the microphone over to you, the members of the audience, on behalf of the Mayor and the Council of Glen Ridge, I'd like to express a few words of appreciation. First to Christchurch for the hospitality it's showing us tonight and for this nice venue. Also to Reverend Diana, who gave us a lovely invocation to begin the evening, and it's quite meaningful for members of the public and to our police force. First, I'd like to thank the panelists and our speakers who spoke so eloquently tonight. And I'd like to thank our colleague officers who are here from other communities to show a partnership with our police force. The Glen Ridge Police Department all members of the Glen Ridge Police Department are very proud to protect and serve our community to the full extent of the civil rights that they all deserve. And tonight is a good example of how our department is also focused on building and bettering relationships with the community and keeping and building your trust. And for that reason, we would like to open up this presentation to the public for questions of any of the panelists. So the only thing we would ask is that you please, out of respect to everyone who's here, if you can limit your comments or questions to about 3 minutes, we would appreciate that. And otherwise, just if you can express your name and address at the microphone, I welcome anyone with questions or comments.
If nobody has any questions or comments and would like some other area of either policing or anything else discussed by the panel, don't be shy about that either. This might be the first community meeting where we have no questions or comments. There we go.
First of all, I definitely want to congratulate the panelists. I really appreciate this outreach. Just consistent with the quote that Attorney Campion, I think it really is critical that for us to eradicate fear, we do have open lines of communication. And that takes, one side is usually having the courage and the humility to make the first step. And so I just applaud this group for the humility, the courage, and the responsibility to make that first step. I think this is important, critical, and should be continued on a regular basis. I think open dialogue always is a precedent for real productive relationship. So again, I applaud the police department. And look, I think it's against that backdrop that, I made some observations of having lived here for about 13 years. When diversity was really practically non-existent. It's kind of funny in the age of, in your 30s, being a pioneer in neighborhoods, right? They're not as diverse as they're maybe used to coming from the city, moving to this town. And I'll tell you, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. No town is perfect. Just share some anecdotes. My wife and I moved here. It was almost like a scene out of like a movie. We came. We were expecting our second child, and we were greeted with warm kind of acceptance. It was almost like I thought it was a candid camera. One of our neighbors came and met us with baked goods. This can't be real. This is and that's continued through the course of years. People have babies on our block. Women tend to band together and bring foods. It's like, people have basically free food for about a month, right? So I think we started having more kids realizing we're paying for free food. But, the reason why I say it was a mixed bag is, I remember when I would go into neighboring Montclair, back when I had hair, went to a barbershop in Montclair, and the folks asked me where I lived, and I think they assumed it was Montclair. So I'm going to try to go through, I apologize. And when I told them where I lived, it was just a pregnant pause. And I was like, what's, just why the silence, right? And they said, look, if you're like a brother, you walking through Glen Ridge, you're likely to get stopped by the police. Like, that was the reputation, rightly deserved or not, of the town. And so that was kind of like so I measured that comment against the backdrop of my personal experience. I said, well, they don't quite match, but keep an eye on them. That was 2003. And I remember maybe one or two times driving, and the police kind of seemed to be always behind the car. My wife would remember that one point where I kind of was indignant. I was like, why are they following us, right? And I pulled over, the police car kept going, and I actually started following the police car, which my wife counseled me not to do. To their credit, they stopped and we kept going, there was no incident. But one thing that sticks out in my mind, is aberrational to the overall positive experience we've had here, is about 3 years ago, I was coming home from work, and kind of turning on, we live on Hamilton Road, so I forgot to do my address. 26 Hamilton Road. And police officers are welcome for baked goods. But, I was turning up Old Oak, and the police was following. And just as I pull up in front of my house, they kind of flash the lights. And as I'm pulling into like the front of the house, my daughters were, you know, looking out the window and they expect me home, and they see these lights are flashing, right? So what's going on? So they approached me and respectfully asked, "Do I drive the license?" And I was a little indignant. I was tired. It was a long day. You can imagine, you know, you come home and just kind of relax. I was not in the mood. And they said that they had run my plates on the car that I had for like 7 years. It happened to be a BMW X5, so okay car. And the report was that the plates didn't match the car. So these are the plates that I had on the car since I bought the car. Okay, so when I got, you can imagine what my reaction was when they told me this. Your computer is absolute BS. And you stopped me in front of my home, my kids are looking out the window, and they're scared. And, you know, truth be told, I think part of the reason I felt like I had the right to do it because I was on my block. But you can imagine if there were a couple of factors that were different. One, my driver's license confirmed that I live in Glen Ridge. Like, what if that were the case? Two, what if I wasn't in front of my home? Like, the kind of fear that I might have felt at that point in time. And, you know, my mentality is such that I'm respectful, but the police officers did protect us. And that was my right of expectation, the citizen paying taxes. And that's how I dealt with them, with respect. But look, you know, you're out of line here. Your report is wrong. You're stopping in front of my home, and this is inappropriate. The police officer was relatively calm. He was probably calmer than I was. But it's something I didn't report. So you're right that there are instances where it happens. It happens. You know, I don't know all the instances, but you're right to suspect that not all of these types of instances are reported. But it was a little bit of a stain on my experience, and it kind of puts into relief. It gives me a perspective in terms of what's going on in the broader community, places that are not as quote-unquote genteel as Glen Ridge, right? Where you have folks who are not white-collar, you know, workers who don't drive BMWs legitimately, or maybe they do, but they just don't have the same bearing or whatever, and how things can escalate very quickly. And so I just want to, I congratulate you for being sensitive to the fact that, you know, just being part of the human race, we have implicit bias. And no one has a monopoly on implicit bias. So I'm not here to suggest that the police have a monopoly on implicit bias. But I do want to say something real thing. For those of you who think that that's a fiction, I hope that this experience shows that it is. Because I was dressed pretty similarly as I am today, and was stopped for no reason. So, look, I want to end on a positive note because, again, I do think that fundamentally my takeaway is, you know, one, implicit bias is real. I have it, unfortunately. At one point I thought I didn't, but sadly, I'm a human being, so I found that I have humanity too. It's quite disappointing. But two, going back to the original point, you know, as we work through these issues as human beings, as, you know, work in the neighborhood, we've got to have the courage to kind of speak truth to power. And we got to have the ability to kind of admit problems so we can work through solutions. And, you know, that's why I think it's a really important forum today. I salute my neighbors for showing up. And again, you know, the folks in power who are here to protect us for acknowledging that also responsibility. Thanks.
I do, you know, one of the things, just real quickly, that I forgot to mention earlier, as we're talking about motor vehicle stops, is that Detective Sergeant Manley and Detective Medico, again, are two juvenile guys to stand up for you guys. Don't forget to see you doing your nice suit and ties. These are the officers out of uniform that are most likely to meet your children. They're in the schools as much as they can be in the schools, and one of the programs that we've come up with for this fall is that during the day we're going to enter the school and hit the 9th and 10th graders that are in driver's ed, and actually give the class that is not just for if you get pulled over in the borough of Glen Ridge, but if you get pulled over anywhere. Kids are all leaving for college, some may go to other states. And then at night, we're going to double down and offer the class, I think it's on October 13th. It's it's actually on the back table, if I'm incorrect. It's on our Facebook too, for the parents. So I think it's really important that it starts the dialogue between parents and kids so that you know what we're teaching the kids and what we're explaining to them as far as motor vehicle stops, and they can also get it reinforced at home. And other than that, I think it really is important. And before I thanked a group of families from town that came and talked to Captain Quinn and I want to say about 2 or 3 months ago, about many of the things that that the gentleman from Hamilton just talked about now. And we're never done learning. We're never done really recognizing that there's some things that maybe police officers see in our own police way as within our day-to-day routine, and that we need to think more, think broader. And it's definitely our goal. I can guarantee this. There's not one police woman, right, Brianna and Patty, or policeman at the Glen Ridge Police Department that any one of you should want to get to know. It's a good group of guys and gals, and they're all progressive, forward-thinking, and intelligent. So, if they're all...
In response to your question, that's part of what the police force here is trying to do, build its community relations, know the people who it serves, and have the people who they're serving know the police officers as well. And that's the chief is talking about it at the elementary level, but that's why we're doing things like tonight. So we do it across all levels of ages. And building that and strengthening that relationship with the community is important to this police department. And we hope to be able to continue to better it.
And I would be remiss if I couldn't, and I don't want to embarrass you, Ms. Alexander, but something really neat happened this summer. I got an email from a woman that's sitting in the back, and she probably doesn't want to be recognized. She's a Bloomfield resident. She wrote me an email telling me that she was pulled over by Officer Chris Grogan, Troy Chris, the friendliest, I can't remember, the friendliest officer. And as I was reading it, first you think, oh, here we go, because people do email me complaints all the time. And she went on to tell me what a good experience it was, and that I should be proud of the officers that work in the borough of Glen Ridge. And since that's something that we don't get you often, I often get thank yous and complaints from people that live in town that had an encounter that they didn't either feel comfortable with or that they love. We don't often get people that live outside the borders of Glen Ridge to really take the time and say thank you. So I invited her to our national night out. She showed up. I invited her tonight. She showed up. And I think that she even expressed that she had a relationship with a few of the officers because she lives on the Bloomfield border of Glen Ridge, and that she had met Officer Nick Salerno, or his name. And this was her chance to meet Officer Grogan. Thank you, Officer Grogan, for not giving Ms. Alexander a summons.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you again on behalf of the Mayor and Council.
when a young student from Glen Ridge High School, I don't recall his name, but he he lost his life on the skateboard, right over the bridge. And I can see really coming together, the community policing people, we were all the same. And that was the one distinction that I could recognize, that there was no difference, there was no separation. We were all one because we all felt the same hurt and pain of the loss of that student. I believe he was a sophomore junior. And, you know, unfortunately, you don't want to see the loss of life, but you hope that that common bond together stays. And unfortunately, it does go away. And, you know, you just don't want to see situations that make it say, hey, we're just different. And that's what keeps us divided. I just like to see things better. And again, like having that with the officer, it's a town where I'm certainly happy now to see some of the diversity slowly come, certainly in the policing section. Certainly I would love to see it in the school district, you know, where we're not really seeing as much of some of the faces to match in terms of teachers and that kind of stuff. But certainly we see the professionals in the police department, and we're really happy about that. But just to really kind of reinforce that community policing and building relationships. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to say it's pointing fingers. Like, the reason perhaps they may not be any relationship that's been formed is that there's a form of guardedness, and not just from television. You know, when you're treated a certain way, and perhaps, you know, we didn't necessarily get the welcome that the young man shared. We did have a child in the town. We didn't get anyone to bring us cookies, and that's why we put our own. And I just like to think that, you know, we are really developing, and I'm glad that technology certainly